Now we do know that our road bike comes equipped with a drop bar. Other types of handlebars that you might find on a road bike are flat bars with risers, or aero bars. All drop bars are not created equal. Some are made out of carbon, some are made out of alloy. Drop bars are also distinguished by their width, by their drop, and their reach. Therefore, it's a little bit more complex than just getting something that matches your bike or what your bike came with. Some serious thought needs to be made into making sure that the drop bar that you ride with is the right one for you. So there are a number of characteristics to take into consideration when it comes to bar and bar selection. The first being the width of the bar. You know, when I first started cycling, everybody wanted the widest bar possible because people were really focusing on being able to open up their chest for breathing, for climbing. In recent years, aero has become the thing. So what people are looking for is the narrowest bar that they can actually ride with and maintain comfort and control of the bar. Bar width ranges anywhere from 36 centimeters to about 46 centimeters. And ideally, what you want to do is you want to get a bar that at least lines up with about your shoulder width. That way you're in a very natural hand position where your hands are actually pointed forward and not much more than that. The important thing to do when it comes to bar width is to experiment with different types to find the right one for you, where you can breathe comfortably, you can get into a reasonably aerodynamic position, but still be able to maintain control of your bike. So the next bar characteristic we're going to talk about is what's called the drop. The drop is a distance from the top of the bar down to the bottom of the bar, or what we'd call the drops of the bar. Bar drop ranges, typically you have either a shallow drop or you have a deep drop. A deep drop is going to offer a very drastic change in terms of the position of your body. For some people, the drastic change between being on the tops and being in the drops is a little bit too much. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to look at the drop of your bar to make sure it's something that works for you. I prefer what's called a shallow drop. A shallow drop obviously means that it's not offering me very extreme angle changes with my hips from being on the tops to being in the drops. I've learned how to bend my elbows, pull my body forward a little bit so that I can get as aerodynamic as I need to, but at the same time, I'm reasonably comfortable. The third bar drop, we don't see a lot nowadays. It's called an ergo drop. An ergo drop is where the bar has certain cuts and angles, where it offers different wrist angle positions when the person actually gets into the hooks of the drops. The next bar characteristic is what we call the reach. The reach is simply the distance between where the bar goes across the stem and how far out the bar goes before it turns and starts going down. The reach allows you to either be more stretched out or a little bit more compact on the bar, but you can also manipulate that with the position that you actually put the brake hoods into, meaning you can move them closer to you or further away to help to dial in your position. The last characteristics about the bar is what's called the bend or the sweep. It's probably one of those things that a lot of people don't pay attention to. Some bars have a very drastic sweep, which means that the bar goes out straight and then at the last minute it juts and turns and starts going forward. Some have kind of like a curvier or more subtle sweep. That happens to be the type of bar that I prefer, because one of the things that I've found is that when I look to get into the hooks of the bar, I don't want the top of my wrist actually banging in to the tops of the bar, and that's one of those things that helps me. But again, it's one of those things that when you get your bike and you get your fit dialed in and you put your hands into different positions, you stand up, you sit down, you kind of like get a feel about what you'll be able to do or not able to do, and from there you can start making subtle changes to help dial in your cycling position. There are three basic positions on the handlebar, on a drop bar of the road bike, those being having your hands on the tops, having your hands on the hoods where you probably spend about 90 to 95% of your time, and then having your hands in the drops. I'm going to talk to you about the techniques that I use in each one of those positions to make sure I remain comfortable and fresh on my rides. Now let's talk about hand positioning. You're going to spend 90% of the time on the hoods. It's what I call your neutral position. It's where most of your bike fit is dialed in for you. And the ideal thing about the hoods is that you have great control of the bike. You should be reasonably comfortable. You should be able to pedal dynamically, whether you're grinding or you're spinning. But most importantly is that you have control of your brakes. You're actually able to shift without any issues. So this is where we're going to spend the most of our time. One of the issues that happens with being in the hoods, regardless of how well your position is actually dialed in, is that there's a nerve that runs right through here that people have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on it. You have to be mindful of that and be ready to do some subtle things in terms of moving your hands around. I just demonstrated one of them to you, is that while in the hoods, you can actually move your elbows out slightly, bring your elbows in a little bit. And if you practice that on your bike, you'll find that you're taking some pressure off of this area. That's one of the things that I do to avoid numbness of hands. The other thing that I do to avoid numbness of hands is I'll move my hand forward to where I'm pressing the web of my hand into the little nub of the lever. Yeah, the little nub. When I do that, I'm not resting on that nerve of the palm of my hand, so it gives me relief. And again, I still have control of my brakes and I can still shift my bike without any issues. The other thing that I do to relieve pressure to the nerve is I'll do what I call splitting my fingers. So I'll split between my pointer finger and my index finger, and I'll just split them and I'll just comfortably rest my hands on here. If you're one of those people where you're riding and you're doing this constantly, focus on moving your hands around, trying to do different things so that you're, number one, not bored. You're also bringing a little bit of relief to your lower back area, but most importantly is that you're not taxing that part of your hand too much. Now, I've seen people do all sorts of things to try to relieve the pressure or the numbness that they feel in their hands, anywhere from double wrapping their bar tape to wearing gloves with padding in them. I happen to think that sometimes double bar tape can be a benefit because it makes the area a little bit squishier, but you're really not dealing with the issue properly. In terms of gloves that have padding, I've found in my experience that actually compounds the situation, because what starts to happen is now eventually the padding will start to compress and that starts to apply more pressure into the area that you're trying to get relief from. Next hand position is where you have your hands on the tops. Having your hands on the tops is what all the cool kids do, because it's certainly like one of them chill positions. You kind of look cool doing it. It may be where you're riding along side by side with a fellow cyclist and you guys are having a little bit of a conversation. But a couple of things to warn you about with your hands on the tops. When I place my hands on the tops, my hands are never like this, like the mitten man. I always separate my thumbs from the rest of my fingers, because what I want to do is I want to hook my thumb on the opposite side of the rest of my fingers. For me, it's strictly a safety issue. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want a bump or something like that. My hands can actually slide off the bar and slide forward. Not only have I seen that happen, I've actually had it happen to me. You can either have your hands right towards the middle, close to the stem, or you can spread them out a little bit. But regardless of how you do it, please be mindful of that safety issue. Obviously, when you're here, you're nowhere near your controls. You cannot brake from the tops and you cannot shift from the tops. Consequently, when I'm in a pace line, I am never in the tops, simply because I don't know what the person in front of me is going to do. It may just be somebody responding to something that's taken place in front of them. I will occasionally get on the top and we're soft pedaling. That's the position that I'll go to relax in a little bit. But again, I'm doing it where I'm more relaxed, the pace is down, and I'm certainly not on anybody's wheel. The last hand position is when your hands are actually in the drops. With a lot of people, when they do get into the drops, they get into the drops in a very awkward manner, which means that they do this. They're riding in the drops and they're here. One of the things that I've found about being in this position is that what you're actually doing is when you're here, you're opening up yourself and you're actually creating a parachute, a bigger parachute right here. Not only is it not efficient because of that, look at how your arms are locked out. The most significant thing about when you're here towards the edge of the drops is that you're nowhere near your brakes. You're nowhere near your shifters. So usually when you're in your drops, you're tearing it up, you're going pretty fast. And to be in this position and not be in a position where you can shift and brake, to me, is an issue. I believe that when you get into drops, you should be getting into the hooks, and getting into the hooks as much as you possibly can. From the hooks, you should be able to shift. You should be able to brake. If you're not able to do that, you need to look at revising your position of both your handlebars as well as your brake placement, which means that you may need to rotate your bars either downwards or bring them closer to you, and certainly look at moving the position of your levers where when you're here, you're able to access the controls of the bikes. Okay guys, that's it. That's my information on how to use a drop bar for comfort, safety, and performance, and also how to avoid the dreaded numb hands. As always, our aim here is to inform, instruct, inspire. Be blessed.